What do you think it means to lead your wife? Let's start there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting question for me because I feel like there's no silver bullet on this stuff. There's no one right way to do it. And a lot of it comes back to, in my opinion, like personality traits, right? There's some men that are more assertive than others. There's some women that are more assertive than others. If you have a match and one's more assertive in one way or another, it's like that's going to take a different shape, right? For me and my wife, Morgan, Morgan is really organized. She's really assertive. She is strong and powerful and opinionated and wonderful and loving. I try to be all of those things too, right? And we complement, I think, each other's skills because there's oftentimes when she'll have a strength in keeping us like organized or on track or on time or something like that. And I'll be more relaxed towards the situation, right? And so us together make a team in that effort where I can potentially, hopefully, bring down her anxiety level a little bit and she can increase my organizational level a little bit, right? Yeah. So it's that kind of idea. And so when we talk about, being a good husband, I think it's a big part of it is identifying like where she's at and what she needs and trying your best to provide that and be that provider and be that like person that's sacrificing for her and on her behalf. And I by no means have this figured out, right? Like I screw up at this every single day. Morgan will be the first one to tell you, right?
She's in the comment section already.
She probably is. She's like, okay, get out the popcorn. Let's see what he's got to say about it.
But the idea is like, you want to do your absolute best for her, right? One of the reasons why we are in Indiana at all, right?
Yeah.
That's a sacrifice for me for her, right? Indiana wasn't on the dance card. She wanted to move closer to family. And I said, yeah, let's go. Like we're in, right? Like that is a gesture. That is a movement for her, right? And so like being able to, I don't want to say suffer because being married isn't suffering, but like being like having those sacrifices, right, is a big part of the equation because things are not always going to go exactly the way that you want them to go, and that's okay. And so when you talk about like how do you be a good husband, I don't think there's a simple answer to it. I do think that it involves sacrifice. I do think that it involves knowing exactly where she's at and what she needs and trying your best to provide that to her, but also standing where you are and understanding what you bring to the relationship because it's two humans, man. You're coming together and under God, now one flesh. It's like, how are you going to strengthen each other and build each other up and help each other grow? And so those are the types of things that I think about when we're discussing, like, what does it mean to actually be a good husband, right? How about you? What do you think?
That was good. It's not about what I think. I told you my goal is, I don't know anything. I need to hear from you guys. So I'll let you talk. What do you think about, do you agree with what Dave said?
I mean, for the most part, yeah, I think, the scripture does give us some clarity on, what it looks like to be a good husband. Ephesians 5, 5, in the same way, 5:28, in the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes just as Christ does the church. I think being a good husband looks like, earlier in this passage, it looks like leading and it looks like guiding your family, guiding your wife. But it also looks like doing whatever it takes to help them and to grow them and to make sure that they are in the most flourishing position as possible, to where if there is an aspect of your life as a man that is degrading to your family, you have to stop the act or activity that is degrading to your family because you're not leading. So, for example, I love to play golf. Haley and I have had to have, in years past, conversations. First off, when we got married, she could not understand why I liked golf so much. So we literally had to have conversations where, well, one, I had to put aside my desire to play as much as I wanted to, but it's just an example. And so there were times where it was like I failed her because this was even before a child, where like I just want to play golf. Well, she would need me to help in a certain way. And it took her calling me out on that. Like, I need you to lead me in this certain way. I need you to be available for me as my husband in this certain way. I had to come to the realization that, my desires, and I think every spouse, male or female, can testify to this. You have to put aside some of your desires for the betterment of another human being or all the human beings in your family. As husbands, I think we take precedent in putting ours aside first for the betterment of our family. Now, obviously, wives don't do things that hurt your family either. But as husbands, we are called to love our wives as Christ loves his church. So Christ, being the eternal Son of God, both fully God, fully man, laid his life down to the point of death to build up his bride, his church. And so there should be absolutely nothing in my life that stops me from leading sacrificially for my wife. So whether that's sacrificing things I want to spend money on if they degrade my family or hurt my family, or activities or hobbies or work life. That's a big thing I harp on about is having a work-life balance. So obviously I need to work hard, but my work will not ever get in the way of serving my family. That's just something I'm very passionate about. But I think it's being a man of integrity, of loving truth, but also being gentle and caring. And the old wristband, what would Jesus do? Mm-hmm. Like it has truth to it. It's like, how would Jesus love his church in this moment? Or how would he take care of his bride in this moment? And if it a lot of times looks like self-sacrifice. And at first you can be like, oh man, that hurts me. Like, I'm not getting what I want. But you really start to learn that when your wife and your children are full of joy, it's the greatest thing in the freaking world. Like, I could make all the birdies in the world and I would be unsatisfied. But to watch my wife and daughter be like carefree and have fun at home and know that dad has taken care of this stuff so they can like live this. Oh, greatest gift to know that they don't have to stress about certain things because I have taken care of it. That may not be what you're looking for, but it's what I get the biggest joy from, when they can just live, because I have led them in a way not oppressively or not authoritarian design, but just like, what can I do to make them more full of joy? And I'm just rambling at this point.
I find it's like when you said I've taken care of it, right? Like, it can take so many different forms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
think that's a wonderful call to action for husbands out there. Like, what is the it for you, and how can you take care of that for them?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a personal journey. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm smoking weed every day and I really need to stop that. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm getting drunk all the time and I really need to stop that. Maybe I'm spending 4 hours on video games every day instead of family time. Maybe I need to stop that. Yeah. Like, and that's the personal stuff. Set aside, like, the actual outward, like, directly impacting their day to day. Like, do I have a job that's providing for them? Mm-hmm. And if not, how do I get one? Like, what am I doing step by step, day over day, to make this unit stronger?
Yeah.
Right? Like, mental, physical, emotional, social, spiritual health. Mm-hmm. Right? How am I elevating those things so I can be the best version of me for them?
Yeah. and again, I'm only speaking to men right here because the list that Haley does for our family is probably longer than mine.
Morgan's is definitely longer.
Let's be real. Like I watched Haley one day do her Kroger order, and I was like, God bless you, baby. Like the fact that you look up a recipe, and like I'm like, yeah, it's like beef and rice. Like that's all I can. But she like the way she serves. So I'm only talking to men in this because, I mean, the way our wives serve us is just, and they have their own role in being a wife and a mother is just beautiful. So yeah.
I think it's one thing to say, you know, the way our wives serve us, because it's like, yeah, I'd put my wife in that category too. She's super boss lady. I mean, great at her job. Like she's a dentist. Like she has an important job. You know, comes home, does a great job. You know, whether it's making dinner, because she doesn't do that all the time, right? I don't know if your wives do or not. It's like I feel like we share a lot of those roles really well together.
Yeah.
Just good teamwork. But at the same time, yeah, I don't make the Kroger list. I might go pick them up sometimes, but you know, there are different weights that each spouse carries.
100%.
Per our first conversation, a lot of times they don't know the weights that we carry. So yes and amen. Hear me, women, as Quentin was speaking to, you know, mostly men. We do see what you do. We do maybe not know how to thank you for it or appreciate you for it the way that you want to be thanked or appreciated. That's really difficult, actually, and it's probably different for every woman. So even the acknowledgement, though, publicly, like, is important.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think there are things that we struggle with too,
100%.
right? You know, going back to the first episode, that we will never talk about, things that women won't ever understand, a different weight, a different just type of responsibility that I think actually the Bible calls us to, which is the first one I think of is protection, like to be the protectors. And so when you talk about taking care of it, one of those things is really just like protection. Do people feel safe? Do your kids feel safe? Does your wife feel safe, both physically and emotionally?
Yeah.
And probably spiritually. Like, do you create an atmosphere where they can thrive and be vulnerable because they're protected, right? And that can be the most difficult thing because, like, we don't always know what they need. And we don't always know, you can't protect them from everything. Mm-hmm. You know, you can't protect your kids from everything. And we'll talk some about kids and parenting kids too. But I think it's such a difficult thing to figure out how to lead a wife specifically because, you know, I joked about in the first episode, I thought about having our wives actually sit down and give commentary on these two episodes we're doing. Because we could sit here and talk for 3 hours, you know, amongst two different episodes on how to be a godly man. And then they could watch it and think, you guys have no clue. You have no clue what I need, like, or what I want or what I want to be. There's a dangerous side to that too, though, because this gets into what if, you know, you want to create and cultivate an atmosphere and a home where, you know, you're helping them thrive. But there does have to be a point of leadership where you also call people out on their stuff. How do you correct your wife? How do you, like, part of exhortation is correction, right? And that can be so difficult to correct anybody, but let alone the person who sees all your faults too. So I'd love for you guys to speak into, as you're trying to help cultivate this thriving family and relationship with your wives, what does that look like in the midst of not disconnection or disunity, but like conflict? How do you tackle that same thing in a godly way, in a respectful way, while also acknowledging, like, hey, we can talk about how garbage men are all day or how much we are oblivious to the needs of women or whatever, but it's like women are not perfect either. They're humans like us. They're perfect. Have fun, man. Have fun with your perfect wife. But you know what I'm saying?
She's your sister-in-law.
I know. I'd say it too. Like, if we can be corrected, they'd be corrected as well. Yeah. And that's part of leadership as well, is figuring out how do I help lead this person? And leadership means calling out the difficult things. And it means trying to help them see where they can become more like Christ, just like they are supposed to do for us, right? It has to be a mutual thing. And I know so many guys who are paralyzed by fear of saying anything to their wife at all, because it's culturally unacceptable right now. You're afraid to be that domineering type of leader, kind of like we had in the first conversation. Mm-hmm. So speaking of that, Because I don't know how to do it either. I'm trying to figure this out.
Well, like you talked about like mutual leadership. I'm a huge advocate of that. Like I have been led by her. The reason the examples of weed, alcohol, and video games came to mind so quickly is because that was me, right? I was smoking weed every single day. I was getting drunk purposefully. I was drinking with intent to get drunk. I was playing hours of video games, right? And like she led me out of those things over the course of our relationship. Like when we first met, that's
Who you were.
yeah, I don't know how she said yes to me, right? And I'm thankful that she did. And she led me out of those things, right? When we talk about like mutual leadership, I have such a heart for that. I think it's such a real thing. I view us as equals, you know? And I think when we talk about leadership within the home and like roles and responsibilities and, you know, the list of things that one does more than another or whatever, it's like, I think it's specific to the house, right? Every house is going to be different. There's some dudes that don't like cooking and wives that love cooking. And so they've, you know, I'll do the dishes, you know, kind of thing.
Figured out what works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And vice versa. And so it's like, so I think it's specific to the house.